right? So remove that concept of always be closing. And let's just rewind and actually answer the question. So where does closing actually start? And for me, closing starts with you already being crystal clear on exactly what you sell. And so what do we mean? I mean, of course you know what you sell, right? Or do you? You see, when we're talking about knowing what you sell, we're not saying you need to say, I sell a widget. You need to think in terms of the customer now. And you need to say, okay, so when the customer buys my widget, what does it do for them, right? What does it do for them in terms of saving their money, in terms of increasing their profitability, in terms of helping them to sleep at night? In other words, solving challenges, or should we rather say problem identifying and problem seeking. And then finally, it helps them to make their team more efficient. So in terms of that, look at your specific product, whatever it is you sell, whether you sell a service or whether you sell a product. Have a look at it and ask yourself the question, in terms of those things, in terms of saving your customers money, increasing their profitability, helping them to sleep at night, and making their team more efficient, what does your product and or service do for them? Because once you do that, you then become very crystal clear, right? You become clear on who needs it, right? Because once you identify your tribe, or in other words, once you identify the perfect prospect who needs exactly what you have to sell, and then you approach those people, now closing becomes a whole lot more simple, right? Because now you're talking to the right people, you're talking to the right decision makers, you at the right organization, and you're crystal clear on how your value proposition or how your product or service will serve them. In other words, what's in it for me in terms of your customer? That's the question your customer wants answered is can you clearly define and refine your message so that I can see how your product or service will actually help me to achieve those four things? Because once you know who your perfect prospect is, right? So once you've identified that perfect prospect, now when you're talking to someone, when you're in a sales meeting, it's not a case of ever feeling rejected, because you can't be rejected by your perfect prospect, right? So your perfect prospect, if they say no, it's just because what they're really saying is, no, I haven't yet understood, or you haven't yet clearly explained to me how your value proposition or how your product or service is going to help me to save money, to improve my profitability, to help me to sleep at night. In other words, to find issues and challenges and remove them, or ultimately to make my team more efficient. So once you've done that, once you know who your tribe is, and somebody says no, you don't need to leave and feel rejected, but you need to leave the meeting and you need to ask some really high-powered questions like, how can I better communicate my value so that they will understand how I'm going to help them? Because when you leave and they say no, you're actually shaking your head and you're walking out and going, well, I know that my product is so valuable, that my product is such a perfect fit for this customer, that if they do say no, they're actually worse off, right? Because that's how well you qualify your prospects. Because once you know how your value, right? And remember, your value is not vomiting features. Your value is looking at the customer and understanding in terms of what they need, right? So have a look at what their needs are and then rewind and say, okay, so how does my value align with that? Let me give you an example. Somebody walks into a car sales dealership and car salesman walks up and he goes, hi, good day, sir. Who would the first person be that you would go and show this car to? And the customer walking in goes, well, my mother, because she's terrified about my safety. Didn't you see me just arrive on a motorcycle? You see, now, obviously the car does accelerate, let's say 0 to 100 in 6 seconds, and it has 800 kilowatts of power. But you see, that's not what that customer wants. What that customer wants to hear is that this car has airbags. It has an NCAP 5 safety rating. It has ABS brakes. You see, that's what their values are. So yes, the car does have performance, but the customer's just told you that they're really interested in the value. In other words, they're interested in the safety aspects of the vehicle. And that's what you've got to do with your product, is you've got to very clearly understand what is it that you sell and how can you align the specific needs or the specific benefits with what that specific customer needs. That's the trick in closing. Because you've got to remember, when you closing is not about telling the person about the 5,000 features of your product. Closing is about identifying just the right benefits that that specific customer needs. And then in terms of what their needs and values are, you outline and you build a picture of how your product is going to support them. Because once you do that, closing sales becomes generic. So let's rewind. You need to know what you sell. You need to identify how that's going to benefit your customer in terms of saving them money, improving their profitability, helping them to sleep at night, and improving their team's effectiveness and efficiency, or improving their organizational effectiveness and efficiency. Because once you've got all that aligned, now you're talking to your perfect customer. You have perfectly qualified the right customer. You've identified the right decision maker.